Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1464 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday into Wednesday. And thank you, as always, for joining us on the podcast and making us your first listen each and every day. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, etc. on the audio side, as well as YouTube on the video side. And today, I'll be talking to my friend Brian Schroeder about the 2023 NBA draft in two-part fashion. This is part one that you are about to listen to / watch, and then part two will also be available in your feeds right now. Brian and I focus mostly on the number 15 overall pick for the Hawks, their first rounder, and some potential candidates for that selection. I'm sure I'll be trying to beg Brian to come back on the podcast at some point later on the cycle as well. But about an hour of Hawks talk with regard to that number 15 pick and plenty to discuss, and a lot of different candidates, honestly. If you missed it, by the way, Monday, I released a new podcast talking about 5 prominent storylines for the Hawks this offseason, ranging from the new regime that's in charge with Quinn Snyder, to the salary cap, to the draft, to some potential trade candidates, etc. And that is still very fresh in your feeds right now. But without further delay, I'll be talking to my friend Brian in a second. First, here's the intro. We'll be back with myself and Brian Schroeder talking about the NBA draft.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I am joined once again by my friend Brian Schroeder for the first post-regular season, post-playoff edition of a draft podcast on Locked On Hawks. Brian is the most frequent guest as far as draft stuff is concerned, and I'm reading your stuff all the way through the cycle. You were on once before during the season, but it's been a while, and how's it going?
It's going. Give me a second to open this delicious Sprite. Sorry.
That's a perfect start to the podcast. We love to see it. Look, I asked Brian to come on, and I know people were clamoring for draft stuff, and we'll have plenty of time. We're recording this, end of April. Stuff will change, and the combine and measurements and all of those things will happen. But the number one topic, other than like current roster shakeup for the Hawks, that I've been asked about is who are they taking at 15 overall. So I think we're going to focus pretty much exclusively on the options at 15. So we're not going to do a lot of Wemby scoot talk. Probably not a lot of like super deep sleeper talk on this podcast. We'll do more of that later on. But I figured there's kind of still like a pretty wide range. I don't know how you feel. I was asking somebody about this earlier this week. I'll start here. Like, what do you make of the middle of the first round? Because I feel like there's kind of a consensus that it's pretty flat for a while. But where do you think, like, where do your tiers kind of land? And like, what do you make of the Hawks being at 15? Because that's where they are.
So the real strength of this draft, because a lot of drafts are referred to as like flat, and it's kind of a pejorative. This draft it's a great draft. It's not, I wouldn't say it's super top heavy. By my eyes, there's the 3 superstar prospects, and one of them is kind of an enigma. Like, I still don't really know what Amen Thompson really is. That's kind of why I love him. And it's not a draft that's going to have like a whole bunch of all-stars. It's not like 2009, but what it is, it's just like, it's deep out to like 6 or 7 to like 24 is almost the same level, and they're all like guys who could go like 10 to 15 to 18 in a normal draft, I feel like. And importantly, a lot of them are like wings, like 6'5" to 6'8" guys, which is obviously what the NBA covers most. Like, if you have a draft with a lot of good players, but they're all 6'1" guards, it's like, well, how good is it really? Because how many of them are really going to play? A lot of centers, it's like, okay, it's fine. You can find a Walker Kessler. Those guys come around. So it's a pretty good draft to have like 8 to 20, I would feel like, especially if you are. I feel like it's a draft where a lot of these guys fit really well with good teams, with like competitive teams. So there might be some trading. I don't know. I know there's no intel on any of that stuff yet. We don't even have the order finalized, but I feel like this is a good draft to have. Like, if you have a guy, you have like the team I've always used is the Pacers. The Pacers have their guy. But now it's just like, which one of these like 7 guys that we have here fits best with him? And I mean, the Hawks have a guy. That's what we always talk about when I come on. It's who fits best. And it's really independent of what they do with like the rest of the roster. I feel like it's an interesting place to be in. Like, they're one of the 4 or 5, like the Nets, Pacers, Hawks, kind of Charlotte, although Charlotte's a little higher up, are the teams where I'm just like, they could pick like 8 guys. Like I kind of change it up every time I do a mock because it's pretty open.
Yeah, I made a intentionally long list, but I mean, mine was like 15 guys long. I mean, and part of that is that, every year somebody falls. I mean, the Hawks have benefited from that, I think, the last 2 years with guys who I had rated higher in Johnson and Griffin falling to them, and that could happen again. You can't bank on it happening, but it could, which means basically anybody that's not in like a top 6 or 7 consensus could get to 15. It's conceivable. And then they got sort of the eye of the beholder stuff where like maybe your front office, and this is even weirder this year because the Hawks front office is a first-time front office. Travis Schlenk is not there. They have these guys who are making choices for the first time, so we know even less about their tendencies. Like I had a pretty good feel for Travis and who Travis liked and what kind of player he wanted. I have no feel yet about Landry Fields, so that makes it even more interesting. And like I think basically what you don't want to do, and I wonder what you think about this too, is draft for need. And a lot of naturally Hawks fans are thinking about their roster right now and what they need, and I get it. And that basically means, they need defense and they need wings. And you mentioned wings. It's a good place to be in this draft. My only concern and would just be, and in previous years, I've kind of said like they almost couldn't draft a center. I think this year they could, if it was in conjunction with a Capella trade, they could conceivably draft a center. I think the only thing that I would not want probably is a small guard who can't defend. And even then, like there aren't that many of those guys in this range.
There's almost nobody. There's nobody who will be in the first round who. So it's not a guard draft. There's really 1 and 2, and depending on how you see like one of Thompson's really 2. It's not like for me the number 2 and number 3 like point guard like initiators are like Marcus Sasser and Mike Miles, who are like the most second round pick guys imaginable. They're both fun. They're both fun players, but like
agreed.
They're not. They are the most middle of round 2. Take a shot on this guy. Maybe he could be like a Javon Carter or. I mean, maybe a Van Vliet type if you to get like the 99th percentile outcome, which doesn't happen.
Yeah. We'll fill in from here, but I want to start by asking you, it's kind of a 2-part question, but one is like, give me your absolute, maybe not insane, like you can't say like Brandon Miller, but like pie in the sky, somebody falls to 15. That's like semi-reasonable for the Hawks.
Taylor Hendricks.
Okay. That's number 1. And
he won't, but
I don't think he will either. He's on my list too. And then, who's the like more reasonable, like as far as like consensus mocks and stuff, like who's your more reasonable choice that you think might get there that you like?
There's a couple guys. I'm going to say Bryce Sensabaugh though, because I think you have to go the upside thing. I mean, Dariq Whitehead is the other choice. Those are the last two guys.
By the way, just to stop right here, every single Hawks fan has made this joke, and I have too, about the Hawks taking yet another former top 5 high school guy from Duke, and it would be the funniest thing in the world if they did it again. But by the way, they very much could do it again. That is very possible.
It would be a fine pick because he's still super young.
Yep,
like AJ Griffin. Now the difference is that he has shown a lot of effects from his injury history in college, and AJ didn't really. Like AJ was just really good, and Dariq has like looked slower. Isn't really getting by people off dribble. But he shot 42% from 3 on like 9.5 attempts for 100 possessions. He's 6'6". He doesn't turn 19 until like 2020. No, when does he turn 19? It's after the draft. It's like August. Like he's young. He's really young. So those are the reasons to take a guy like that at 15. I mean, worst case he's like a spot up shooter. Best case he's like Jamal Mashburn or something. Like because he's big. He's a big dude. But Dariq is almost too simple. It's just like you take him if you think the injury stuff is behind him, and you can get him in better shape, and he can get some quickness back, and he can be like a creator. If you don't think that, then you don't take him. I feel like I really don't think it's a pretty simple evaluation.
I like him. I mean, the joke is the joke, and it is funny, but he is a very talented guy. There's a reason why it makes sense, and it's because he is very talented. The shooting. I mean, the question may be defensively what he looks like in Atlanta, where they already have some perimeter defensive questions. But the shooting is very interesting for sure, and the size and the pedigree. Like I'm not sure he's a guy. I'm not sure where he's going to go. I thought he might be a late riser, and then he seems like he almost has gone the other way in some of the consensus intel stuff. So I don't really know what to make. I mean, he could be there for sure. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. If you've ever been trying to find tickets to a big event at the last minute, it can be really stressful and actually be kind of taxing for your emotions plus your wallet. After all, buying tickets should not be a hassle. It should be more about having the fun at the event. With Gametime, get the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for sports and music and comedy and theater. And they have killer deals, lots of tickets, and the best price guarantee. With all of that, you could be avoiding stress and actually getting hyped for the event you're actually going to be attending. Spring is here. There's lots of events happening in Atlanta. I'm sure that's the case wherever you are right now as well. With Gametime, you can get flash deals and lots of tickets as well. And it's so easy to find and buy the tickets for any kind of event you're looking for. You can be finding the images of where you're actually going to be sitting with your new seats and where they'll actually be. And they have protection if your event happens to get canceled. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals right into the day of the event. And with the Gametime guarantee, you get the best price possible. If you can find tickets in the same section, in the same row for less, Gametime will give you a credit for 110% of the difference. And it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You can buy tickets just a matter of seconds. Plus, those tickets will actually be available and sent directly to your phone to make it very easy for you. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I do want to go back to Hendricks because that's the guy I knew you were high on. I thought you might say him, just for people's reference, because he's not the most famous person unless you are dialed into the draft. So he played at UCF, one and done. That's already strange. A one and done from UCF is already odd. So explain to people what Taylor Hendricks is.
He's a twin. I don't think people know that. He's younger. His twin plays. He's just staying there. He's not particularly good. Taylor Hendricks is. I wrote about this. He, like, on the surface, it's easy to see why people like him as a first rounder because he's 6'9", 6'10", 40% 3-point shooter, block shots, plays good defense. Just like a nice, like it's very easy to project him to be like a role player in the NBA. It's just like a spot up shooting four, plays defense, and like is a good athlete, runs a transition, has a lot of like good cuts. But I really feel like he is the guy in this draft who is and he's not that low usage. He was around 20, but I feel like he's the guy who has a lot to unlock with the ball in his hands. And if he does, he's like, I feel like he's almost like, if he really starts to unlock, like physically, he kind of is like Jeremy Grant. That's like, I think the closest comparison physically. He's a little bigger though. He's like 6'10".
Yeah.
So he's going to be some kind of mix of like whatever the in between of Jeremy Grant and like Jaren Jackson is, like that player.
A pretty good player is what that would be.
Yeah, it's just like, is he a center? Maybe he has some Bosch in him. Maybe he has some Evan Mobley, although he's not as big as Evan Mobley. But Hendricks just has he has such a high baseline of just competency because he's just one of those guys who just stays connected at all times defensively, knows exactly what he's doing, switches, hedges, he's not 1-5 defender because those don't exist, but there's almost no guard in the NBA that I wouldn't feel like he could at least deter, like Steph, I guess. But if I'm not, who cares?
Right. Exactly. Nobody can do that. So it's
I guess what I'm saying is the things he needs to develop to become like an actual third scorer and switch defender who blocks shots and shoots spot ups is just getting more confident with his handle and gaining like 10 pounds of muscle. And it's like that every single NBA player has done that. Like, those are very simple things. Like AJ, honestly, that was my pitch for AJ last year. It's like he just needs to become better at handling. It's like, okay, he will.
He already has.
It's not hard to do that. And any NBA team will tell you they can do that. They are not worried about that in the slightest.
Well, and especially for a guy who's already, like you said, 6'9", 6'10", like even if he didn't do that, he'll be very useful, you would imagine, as a floor spacer who can defend and the defense.
The cutting is really, really good. And he has touch on like little floaters and little hooks.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy. I think, like you said before, I don't think he's going to get to the Hawks. I'd be surprised.
Probably not.
But the Hawks, let's just say they fall in love with him for whatever reason, they have an extra first from Sacramento. They could move up if they wanted to. It's conceivable. I do wonder what he looks like in Atlanta. I mean, I think he would be an interesting guy if they were to, let's say, move on from John Collins, which has of course been rumored forever. And then you have him and Jalen Johnson and Sadiq Bey. It's fairly interesting. Do you think he's a 4, Hendricks, long term?
He might be a 5. Yeah,
he might be a 5.
I think he's a front court player. Yeah, he has That's why I compared him to Jaren or Mobley. He's not that level of prospect, but he has their wing skills, like the movement skills that those guys have, where he can really get down and crouch and turn his hips. And like the shot blocking is real. Like he gets way above the rim and challenges people. And despite being thin and having kind of like weird, his shoulders are not filled. That's kind of looks like how he kind of has Halliburton's shoulders, like where it's not the blades are weird. I don't know. He doesn't look like a guy. I mean, not narrow, just like narrow, like wide. Like he's broad, but like if you turn him sideways, he just looks real thin.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. He just every time I watch him, he's a classic guy. I could watch a full game at UCF played, and he would be 2 for 9, or like I don't know 4 for 12. But he had a good, like he played well. He just did a lot of things. Just highly competent. I guess it's almost like PJ Washington, but like with a actual like a really athletic frame, which is an interesting player to me. Like I don't know how else to describe him. Like he can shoot like PJ. Like he's that kind of like legit street. Like he'll get hot and hit 5-6 in a row. The balance is great. He has like the balance on his release is great. He does sometimes kind of like lean left or right or forward, and I think that's where a lot of his misses come from. But he still shot 39% on like real volume. I guess the best way to describe him, I looked this up. I've got this memorized now. I'm including Chet Holmgren in here because I consider Gonzaga a high major. But the high major freshman with 30 made threes, 30 dunks, and a 5 block percentage. It's Chet, Jaren Jackson, Jarris Walker, Jonathan Isaac, Isaiah Austin, and Taylor Hendricks. And Taylor Hendricks has 20 more made threes than any of those other players in that season.
Yeah, I mean, much more of a perimeter skill guy at this stage. Obviously,
yeah.
he's young too, and one and done age
he's
player.
He's exactly 1 year younger than Brandon Miller.
Well, there you go. No, I mean, I agree. He's definitely on the short list, the dream list. I mean, it's kind of how, again, not to go back to last year too much, but I didn't think Griffin was going to get to them, and he did. And I think Hendricks would be similar if he were to fall there. I'd be even more surprised if he got to 15 than I was with AJ. But
he has no injury problems.
And that's the reason why AJ fell. I mean, pretty clearly. So, but yeah, that's the dream pick and maybe the trade up guy. We talked about Whitehead for a second. You mentioned Bryce Sensabaugh. He's a guy I got asked about him a couple times actually this week, just kind of randomly. Interesting player. What, like 6'6", like 230, 240. Like he's kind of he's pretty big. He's not I think he's almost 20 already. What do you make of him? Because I think Ohio State was like pretty off the radar this year. They were not very good as far as college basketball was concerned. And then
he was.
And that was their problem. Yeah, but he was good, but in an interesting way. So tell people about Bryce Sensabaugh.
So Bryce is a fascinating player because if he's a 6'6", 240 small forward, you think he's like a PJ Tucker size guy. Like he is that size. Like he's maybe a little taller. Bryce has like ballerina footwork. Like he legitimately has like DeMar DeRozan level footwork in college as like a shot maker, and he is like just a pure isolation scorer. Like he's just an incredibly talented 15 feet. And I mean, the 3-point percentage is good. Like he's a good 3-point shooter, but I think his percentage from 12 to 20 was around 49%. And he had like 15% of those shots assisted. So he just got the ball at the nail and just put people like nobody that they played in college basketball could stop him. It just was like, is he gonna hit the shot or not? That was it. But he's not like a high level athlete. He's not even like a super strength guy. I mean, he's a big and strong guy, but it's just timing, footwork, creating. Like the handle is really good. I almost compared him to Mark Aguirre, or the other guy I almost compared him to, I did compare him to, is Paul Pierce almost. Like he has that level of just like you're done.
Yeah.
Like if he gets you to like 15 feet and you are, I don't know who guards him is the thing. Like I really think it can translate.
The thickness, like the power. Not, I mean, I don't. Is it power? It's almost just like physicality. I don't know. Like Pierce was never the greatest athlete, especially in like older Pierce was not a great athlete by any means, but he was just big and physical and got to spaces, and that's interesting. I had not heard or thought about that. I mean, the scoring. I don't know him. The size. It's so weird. Like it's hard to figure. I'm having trouble translating him, and I don't know why it is. I'm having trouble like seeing him in the NBA. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because of the Big Ten is odd, and it's more of a ground bound league in a lot of ways. And then how athletic is he? I don't know. I mean, he's pretty athletic, but he's not like a super duper athlete. But he could.
Yeah,
Part
his
of
athleticism
he's so thick anyway.
is more.
He's big, man.
His athleticism is more like his balance and his like ability to contort himself and like his Luka style, like his last step stuff. He's not like, I mean, he's not a poor athlete, but I would say he's a below average like wing athlete in the NBA, but he's just huge. And it really, there's not really a player like him in the NBA right now. It's really hard. Like, honestly, the closest player to him in the NBA right now is like Cam Thomas, but if Cam Thomas was
6'8",
6'7",
yeah.
Like, it's really fascinating. That's kind of why I have him.
Can he guard? That's the other thing I ask you. Is
a little.
What about his defense? Because I mean, this is not a good comparison, but he will be compared to last year's Ohio State one and done wing and Branham. He probably shouldn't be, but you know how that works. It's just what it is.
Very different player. Yeah,
they're very different players, and I would not do that. But like Branham just couldn't defend anyone and still can't.
Yeah. Bryce is not. There's nothing. No, he's not horrible. He's just not very good. He's just fine. He doesn't really. He's reasonably like the team defense is okay. Like he doesn't get beat on back cuts. Like he pays attention. He can diagnose plays. He boxes out. Like he gives a solid enough effort for a 33 usage guy. So I don't think he's gonna be hunted or like killed out there. But you could also there could be some issues with just like high leverage playoff stuff. That's really all I'd be concerned about.
Which
that's all something you could say for I don't know 54 players in this draft. It'd be like
right. I was gonna say. I mean, most even guys who are
pretty much
good NBA players.
Everybody except for the Thompsons, Wembanyama, Jarris Walker, and Taylor Hendricks.
And even this is a different conversation. But how many proven good NBA players have that same question? I mean,
yeah,
we just seen it in the Hawks. I mean, not the Hawks Celtics series. Like there are guys on the Hawks roster that are good players that have playoff concerns in certain matchups. It's just what it is.
Hold on, what?
Yeah, well, but current bogey. I mean, we've seen it with Collins at times. We've seen Capella in the modern NBA. Like in certain matchups, like it's tough for those guys. Today's show is brought to you by the award-winning app at PrizePicks. PrizePicks Daily Fantasy made easy. It's amazing. I know that you will love it as well. It's very easy to use, and you can win up to 25 times the money on your entries at PrizePicks. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and every single day during the NBA playoffs, one PrizePicks user will actually have a chance to become a millionaire. If you place an entry after 8 a.m. Eastern Time, you could be randomly selected, one person per day, and whoever actually placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. If you get all 6 correct, it's $1 million. 5 of the 6, $80,000, and 4 out of the 6, $60,000. If you're looking for full details, they can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at that link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is actually go and play a game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. That is prizepicks.com/million. And also download the PrizePicks app at prizepicks.com today. It's set up actually play fantasy sports. If you're a first-time user, get 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. Do not forget that promo code. It is locked on at sign up for the instant deposit match up to $100. Check it out now at PrizePicks. And one more time, it is prizepicks.com/million. Okay, so I want to go to another. I was going to save it, but let's just do it now. Jett Howard. Michigan guy. I've seen a lot of Jett Howard. He's the guy I've seen the most on this list, probably. People seem to be all over the place on Jett Howard. I'm sure you've seen this too. Like there was a movement early in the season where like Jett Howard top 10 pick was like firmly in play. And then it's like now Kobe Bufkin is like ahead of him in mocks and they're teammates and they're very different players. But
I understand that. I mean, Kobe was great. I understand the reason for that.
He was.
I feel more or less the same about Jett as I did. I have him slightly higher than I did before the season because I was in on him as like a one and done player.
Yeah, you were very high on
him. As I say a lot, there's never been more than I think 21 freshmen is the most that have ever been drafted in any one year. So I really only try to do 15 or 20, maybe 25 of those guys, actually project them, and he was one. So was Bryce. And like I got a little higher on Jett earlier in the year when he was dishing and hitting everything. The handle and the passing really were standing out. because he's not. He can't play. He's not good at defense. He's not like physical at all. He's not a good rebounder.
No, he was an excruciating defender to watch. I mean, obviously, I watched a lot of Michigan basketball for. It was tough, and it was not only him, but he was tough to watch on that end of the floor, which is not a huge. I mean, he's also a weird case in that, he's the son of Juwan Howard, but he was not supposed to be this fast. Like he was kind of not. He was on the radar because he was Juwan's son.
He was 6'4" at one point.
Yeah, and he also went
3 years ago.
He went to the Iverson Classic in Memphis and like blew up. Like everybody's like, "What's going on with Jett Howard?" Because like he was more like, he was a good prospect, but he was like in the 50 to 70 range kind of thing, and he kind of started rising from there. But I mean, what's the skill set look like? Because I mean, the shooting is what everybody will point to, and I believe in the shooting. The field's pretty decent, I think. Coach's son, so you think he would be able to kind of feel the game. Can he defend at the NBA level is a question, and then also like, what's his role on offense? His best role on offense, I should say, in the NBA too.
His role on offense now is like current day Otto Porter, just like you are shooting, like you're positioning to shoot, you're running around, like you are shooting, and if anything else comes from that, if you pump fake, dribble in twice, make a nice pass, good enough. But I think the shooting is still pretty. Like I don't think he's a significantly worse shooter than Grady Dick. Or even Miller, honestly. Like those are like the three really high level wing shooters. Like
I almost didn't even I'm probably not even going to include Grady Dick on the list just because I think he's going to be gone by the time the Hawks pick. But he's the one, and again, this is a Hawks podcast, so context wise, they do need shooting. I mean, it's undeniable they need shooting. I think some of that will be the fact that AJ will play more next year, but also they have, this is a context that has a harder time taking on a bad defender for obvious reasons. You're talking about the backcourt as it is now. I mean, with the way that DeJounte played this year plus Trey, it's difficult for them to take on a bad defender on the wing. It's not impossible, but with the first round pick, they kind of have to, at least in my mind, maybe try to aim for not a bad defender in this class.
And the thing is, Dick will be hunted. He was hunted sometimes. He's not. I don't think he's like a disastrously better. I think you could argue
better than Jett.
Slightly better than Jett. Yeah.
I think he's better than Jett. I mean, early in the year,
he was better. He's like he reacts quicker. Yeah.
Where do they play their first that Christmas tournament or Thanksgiving tournament? Where did Kansas start their season? I can't remember where they played their first.
Was it Maui or was it?
I think it was Maui. One of those.
I don't remember.
Wherever they were, he was not ready to play defense yet. It was very obvious, and it was like jumping off the screen. Like he looked awful. And then people kind of just like form their opinion on that. And I get it. But if you watched him in like February, he was competitive defense. I mean, he's not going to be good, but he's
6'8", he's big.
Yeah. But he's not tall. And again, I think that he'll be gone. So that's why I'm not really bringing him up too much here.
Yeah.
But Grady Dick is he's the consensus best shooter in the draft. If you want to pick one, it's one of those things. I mean, maybe you could say
it certainly looks like aesthetically, I think, because Miller's results are roughly as good, and Miller will be a good shooter.
He's a different class, obviously.
I'm low. Top 5. Yeah, I'm low on Miller as like a star prospect, but he is a top tier. He's in my number 1 tier, and he should even I think he's a top 8 player. Like he's going in the top 8. He's probably going 4th.
I was going to say he's going to go in the top 4. I think so too. And I do think that we'll save this for later. I think the Miller versus Scoot thing is kind of silly, but he's a good prospect. But
but aesthetically, Grady Dick's shot is the most pleasant looking in this.
It's gorgeous, and he made 40% from 3 on huge volume in college, and he's that's going to be his game too. In a different way, like with Jett Howard, I think there was a hope, maybe there still is, that he could be a little bit more of a scorer, whereas Grady Dick is going to be a shooter in the NBA. Like we all know that's like that's going to be his appeal. He's going to be good at it, and that's going to be what it is. So I don't know. Jett Howard is. I'm a little biased, obviously, on Jett Howard, but I also don't. I'm not in love with Jett, to be honest. I think that the defense is enough to scare me.
Yeah.
But I think we're in the Hawks range. It would be fine. I think at 15 would be fine. It's just that in Atlanta in particular, I don't think that I doubt that he'll be the guy I want. When the Hawks come on the clock, I don't think he'll be the guy that I would choose. But it wouldn't be terrible either.
Who's your flavor is really the theme of this draft.
Yes.
It's like what flavor of player do you want? And yeah, I can see the concern. I think Jett needs to be somewhere like Orlando or even like, well, maybe not Portland because I don't know if their defense is actually good, but he needs to be on a team with a bunch of athletes. to sort of
Yeah.
compensate for some of his flaws.
And that's
He
not
can
the
just
current
let it
version of
die.
the Hawks. That's not the current version of the Hawks with the backcourt what it is and all of that. All right, that will do it for part one of this two-part episode with myself and Brian Schroeder talking about the NBA draft. Don't forget, there is part two still to come. In fact, it should be in your podcast feed right now. As you're listening to this podcast, anywhere you get your podcast, please subscribe as well. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Odyssey app, and also over at YouTube on the video side. Please follow the program on Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on Twitter at BT Rowland. Follow Brian's work as well. Plenty more to come. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.